I ultimately made the man who conned me pay a stunning price. And it all started when I realized I'd been hoodwinked, bamboozled, and led completely astray. For an entire year, he had me living a lie. And when I found out, I decided I would dismantle every single aspect of his life. It began after I'd just ended a 12-year relationship. I was vulnerable. And then I met Leo. He was so charming and handsome that I genuinely thought I'd won the lottery. He was incredibly pushy about defining our relationship and saying I love you right away, which I mistook for passion. He introduced me to his family. And soon his niece was even calling me auntie. It all felt so real. Leo told me about his 3 children and their mothers, painting a sad story about how the mother of his oldest child was vindictive and kept the kid away from him. At that moment, he was laying the foundation of his deception, completely unaware that this single lie would eventually lead to his own downfall. Then, the cracks started to show. His ex-girlfriend, Jenna, began calling all the time, multiple times a day. He explained that they had 2 children together, but his grandmother had legal custody. The lie I was fed was that both he and Jenna had jobs that required a lot of travel. So signing over guardianship just made things easier for school and emergencies. It sounded plausible enough. But then Jenna moved to the city we were living in for what he called work training. A little while later, he told me she was moving here permanently, but without her kids. When I asked why the children weren't coming with her, the excuse was that they needed to stay in their school. They were only 4 and 6 years old. I thought staying with a parent would be more important than their kindergarten peer group. But I was trying to be the cool girlfriend, so I kept my mouth shut. His job was another strange area. He claimed to be in the cannabis industry, which turned out to be partially true. He and Jenna's brother-in-law were trafficking marijuana by buying it in legal states and shipping it through the mail. So, when he told me he was taking a work trip to Oregon, I didn't think much of it. But after a week, his story started to fall apart. His phone was constantly dead, even though he always had a power bank with him. The final piece of the puzzle clicked into place when one of his friends in Oregon, a woman named Crystal, started posting cuddled-up selfies with him online. I immediately put 2 and 2 together and dumped him for cheating. Furious and hurt, I did something messy. I went on his Facebook wall and aired everything out. And that's when something amazing happened. As one person later commented, this was maybe the first time in history that some real good came out of a messy breakup Facebook post. The mother of his oldest child, a woman named Sarah, saw my post. She contacted me and laid out the entire horrifying truth. The lies he had told me were staggering. First, he had his oldest daughter's phone number and she was not being kept from him. He simply never bothered to contact her. He owed over $20,000 in back child support for her because he had never made a single payment. He constantly moved and worked under the table to avoid being forced to pay. He had a massive criminal record I knew nothing about, starting with a rape he committed at 15, followed by a lifetime of fraud, larceny, and drug charges. His ex, Jenna, the one who moved to our city? She wasn't his ex at all. They were still together. And I had been his side chick for the entire year. His family knew and played along, even involving their own children in the lie. They hadn't given up their 2 kids for work. They willingly gave them up because they preferred to do drugs, heroin for him, pills for her. And the bombshells kept coming. There wasn't a third child. There was a fourth. Years ago, he and another woman had conspired to pin the paternity of her child on another man, who had now been paying child support for 17 years for a kid that wasn't his. Finally, the woman in Oregon, Crystal, wasn't just some fling. She was his star-crossed lover from childhood. Their tragic romance was constantly interrupted because one or both of them would end up in jail. A background check I ran later confirmed she had her own terrifying record, including criminally negligent homicide from a DUI that killed her passenger. This revealed Leo's greatest fatal flaw, his profound narcissism. He believed he was smart enough to keep all these worlds separate, to manipulate everyone indefinitely, never imagining that the people he wronged might one day find each other and compare notes. After profusely thanking Sarah for telling me the truth, I thought about just walking away with my dignity intact. But I couldn't let him win. I knew I had the power to bring down Thor's hammer on him, and I was going to use it. Leo was about to learn a very hard lesson. In the digital age, a person's entire life, their secrets, their identifiers, their vulnerabilities, can be packaged and delivered in a single email. And he had just pushed the wrong person to hit send. I gave Sarah all of his information: social security number, state ID numbers, and all of his known addresses. She immediately contacted her state's child support services. The day before his federal tax refund was scheduled to hit his bank account, she got the information to them. They were fast enough to intercept the entire refund. Reading that news, I almost hurt myself grinning. For the first time in his life, he had unwillingly paid for something for his child. The consequences snowballed from there. His past due child support was added to his credit report. A warrant was issued for his arrest in the state where his oldest child lives. His driver's license is set to be revoked, and he won't be able to get a new one in any state until he's current on the $20,000 he owes. If he ever gets a legitimate job, 25% of his wages will be automatically garnished. The best part? Leo, oblivious to all of this, recently contacted Sarah to try and arrange a meeting between his oldest daughter and his new girlfriend Crystal's child. Sarah is playing along, pretending it's all going to happen. He's planning a trip to meet his daughter, but the only people he'll be meeting are the police, who will be waiting to arrest him on that warrant. To cap it all off, I knew the name of the business his ex-brother-in-law used to launder his drug money, so I dropped an anonymous tip to the IRS. His only source of income is about to disappear. As one commenter pointed out, this was the best kind of revenge. It resulted in a net improvement in people's lives, namely his children finally getting the financial support they deserve. The story isn't even over. I told a couple of my hacker friends about what happened, and they've decided to take care of a few more things, like finding that poor man who was conned into paying for a child that isn't his for 17 years. In the end, this whole ordeal taught me that a life built on lies is a fragile thing. All it takes is one person armed with the truth to bring the entire structure crashing down. It proved that sometimes the most satisfying form of justice is ensuring a person finally has to face the consequences they've spent a lifetime running from. So, let me ask you, what would you have done if you were in my shoes? At what point does fighting for justice cross the line into pure revenge?